So let's make a hypothetical part. And I'm going to make this part and then I'm going to modify it. And we'll talk about some of the things that you can, can't, should not do when working with pieces. So I'm going to go to the top plane and I'm going to sketch a somewhat reasonable, complex, whatever you want to call it, a generic geometry. And I really don't like anything being underdefined if I can help it. Since this is just an example, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw some dimensions in on this part because I want to. So I'm putting in some relations. I am going to try and get as much as I can dimensioned relative to the origin. Again, dimensioning things relative to your datums, to your origin is always a good idea. The fewer kind of chains I have in my dimensions, the better, the more resilient my parts are going to be, because changing one thing will have a smaller impact on the rest of my parts. Also, adding relations is typically better than not, because if I have relations and I change something, the relations will allow the parts to scale in an appropriate way. So again, I'm trying to keep everything down to a single set of datums, using my origin for horizontal, and kind of this top line, which is equal to the origin for my vertical. And I have values here that are kind of all in the tens, which is good to keep track of, because if I want to do something later, I have some ideas to what the scale of my part is. So I'm going to extrude this. I'll use a mid plane. Let's use 40. So this is what I'm going to start with. And let's say this part, I'm going to shell out the middle portion. And then I'm going to mirror this about the, let's do the front plane, not top plane, front plane. Oh, I don't want to mirror the shell, I want to mirror the body. Let's just do both, let's do both the parts. Yeah, it doesn't work. So this is an example of something that doesn't work, because the shell won't mirror the way we want it to. So I'm actually going to delete this feature. It won't let me switch a feature mirror to a body mirror. And I'm going to mirror about the front plane and use the shell as my body. So I'm going to body mirror, I'm going to use that. And that allows me to have this shell on both sides of the part. And then I'm going to add a fillet to this on the top, bottom. Okay, make it look like it's one piece put together. So say you were given the task of removing half of the shells from this part and maybe doing some other modifications. How can you do that if everything is derived off of that original piece? Because right now, anything I do to change that feature is going to cause an issue. So I can't really get rid of this hole without getting rid of this hole the way this part is set up. Does that make sense? Because it's a body here. But what I can do is I can change the order that I do things. So I'm going to move my mirror up above my boss extrude. Now it's shelling, but it's shelling too much. So we'll see that because it's shelling out the interior portion. I only wanted to shell half of it. But what I can do is in my mirror, I can unmerge these. Now I have two bodies, right? And the left one has the cutout, the right one does not. My fillet is broken because it's not going on that, but I'm just going to roll back before I have the fillet. And now I can merge these two bodies together using the combine tool. Just use add. And I want to get both of these bodies. And then I can bring my fillet back out, boom, fixed. Right? So the trick there really is knowing the importance of the order of operations of the tools, and then also being able to manipulate it to treat those things as separate bodies for when you do the fill. You can pretty much guarantee you're going to get a hard question in CSWP that asks you to do something where you're manipulating the bodies as the quick way of solving that problem. There probably is a much more complicated way I can go through and fill in this section.
Yeah, that's what
right. Because that's harder, right? Like I just do an extrude that fills in half of the part or whatever, but it's going to be hard for me to get that to be accurate and also have that be a reasonable amount of time, right? So, again, you may also have the opposite problem, right? Where I have a part like this, and you're asked to put the shell onto both sides of the part where it's only on one. In that case, we're really just doing the opposite operation, right? I need to make sure that I go and I do the shell before I do the mirror, right? And then I can combine and fill it. Now I've got it on both sides. So knowing that I can move the features around in this model tree, and I can use my rollback bar to kind of control and add features in halfway through the model without having to remodel things, is extremely important to be able to work effectively on CSWP.
Is there any scenario where you would delete an entire feature and then just recreate it?
Yeah, actually, definitely.
Sometimes I'm not sure like what the scope of the question is, so like if I should completely like redo something.
A perfect example of that is if this mirror was a feature mirror and not a body mirror, and I needed to change it, I would need to delete that because I cannot change a body mirror or pattern into a feature mirror or pattern or vice versa. So as an example here, so I'm going to go back, and this one is the body one, which allows me to get the geometry that I want, right? If I delete this one, well, what do I do? So sometimes you don't want to delete dependent features. So nice to say, so usually if this was on a CSWP question, I would have the option to not delete child features. This one, because it's no longer going to have two bodies, it can't use the combine tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and yes, I can always just put it back in there, right? So now I've gone back, and now I can go and I can mirror, and I can do a feature mirror, right, using the front plane. Sorry, and say maybe the boss extrude. Right, now I'm going to get a totally different. I did it after the shell, right? I can't go back and I can't change this into a body mirror. So if you want to use a feature mirror and they give you a body mirror, or if you want to do a body mirror and they give you a feature mirror, then you can go back and switch that, right? And you can tell they do give you different kind of sets of results. In this case, because I did the mirror after the shell, I get that 1/2 piece, right? If I wanted to include this shell in this, I don't think that actually ends up working out. It doesn't, because it doesn't know where to put that shell after it's merged with the other half, right?
Would you ever like delete like 2/3 of the part?
I don't think I would do it.
Just as an extreme example.
I mean, yeah, I would. You could,
So
right?
you could, okay, so it would work, but it's just not.
It depends on how long you think it's going to take you to redraw
It's not
that geometry. And also being very careful to preserve any situations where global variables have been defined inside those features. So I think that probably the biggest pitfall there would be, say you had a hole inside that geometry that was equal to global variable Q, and then you deleted it, and now you don't know what size that hole is supposed to be because it's not given anywhere in the documentation for the part, right? That would be the concern that I would have in terms of deleting things. Is that am I losing information that I'm not going to be able to get back? So I guess if I was going to delete them, I'd probably investigate like edit feature and see what the relations and dimensions were before I delete it. So if I need to remake it, I can do that. Or, save the part as a different file name. And then start deleting things, and then if I can't recover it, go back to the original file, right, or wherever I was in the last step, and continue. Yeah. Other questions?
I think that was good.
Okay. I'm gonna stop recording. So I'll have that just up as a reference in case you want to look at it.